You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Welcome to Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. Each week, we'll take a deep dive into the world of volatility with in-depth analysis, trading activity reviews, strategy breakdowns, cutting-edge education, and much more. We'll also bring you exclusive conversations with the traders, researchers, and asset managers who are reshaping the volatility landscape. If it involves volatility, then you'll find it on Volatility Views. Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution in trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. And now, it's time to take a deep dive into the world of volatility. It's time for Volatility Views.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time once again for Volatility Views, the premier program for volatility traders. My name is Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com. As well as, of course, from the ever-scintillating Options Insider Radio Network. Remember, all you folks in the secret club get to join us for Options Oddities about an hour after the show. Today, we're going to break down all the goodness going on in the world and weirdness really going on in the world of unusual options activity. Glad so many of you enjoyed the pro Q&A session from this week. Already got next week's lined up. It's a doozy. Should be a fun one as well. Where do you go to learn more about the secret club? Well, of course, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. You really should add optionsinsider.com/secret club. It does have a certain resonance to not so secret anymore. A lot of folks are really enjoying it out there. Glad to see so many of you are having fun. Of course, wherever you listen live after the fact, make sure you keep hitting us up with those questions and comments. If you listen after the fact on all the litany of outlets that it's available on, your iTunes, your Google Podcasts, your Stitchers, your Audibles, wherever the heck you get it. Do keep rating and reviewing. It really does help all the new folks discover the content out there. I had someone write in recently said they listened to Boot Camp and Vol Views, which is interesting because they listened to our most basic show and then one of our more advanced shows. So it's an interesting mix. But hey, whatever content floats your boat, we love you all out there. Let's see who we're hearing from on the old program today. First, let's go back down deep into the heart of Texas. He's pushed aside the plate of brisket. he is ready to talk some vol. He is the greasiest of meatballs, Mr. Mark Sebastian from OptionPit.com. Mr. Meatball, welcome back to the program. How is the brisket today, sir?
Oh, it's delicious as always, as is this market, which is definitely giving us some mixed signals today. Can't wait to dive in.
Yes, it is definitely a mixed day out there on the street. And joining us to help us parse this mixed madness out there in the market, we have holding down the MIAX hot seat today, Mr. Jim Carroll, the Senior Vice President and Portfolio Manager over there at TOROSO Advisors. Jim, welcome back to Volatility Views.
Hello, Mark and Mark. Happy to be back with you. You sound like you're in a really good mood today.
Yeah, it's a fun one. It should be an exciting one. Everyone should be excited because it's Vol Views time. So let's do it. It is time for the Volatility Review.
It's time to break down the latest developments in the volatility trading world. It's time for the Volatility Review.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Vol Review, the portion of the show where we do just that. We break down the week that was and indeed still is some vol trading and trending and analysis and unusual activity and all sorts of fun perspectives. And coming into the start of the show, as you mentioned, it's a bit of a mixed day out there on the old street. S&P up about 0.25%, Dow closing in on 0.5% to the upside. Meanwhile, NASDAQ deciding to play and dance to its own drum, off nearly 0.4%, hence the mixed messages out there on the street. Vol certainly seems like it's easing its way into the weekend as well. Spikes dropping below the 17 handle before showtime, 16.75. That puts it down about 1.25. We were right around an 18 on the show last week. VIX cash also below the 17 handle as well. It's about a 16.65 coming into showtime. Puts it off a little over 1.5 points, about 1.6 points from this time last show. So vol, after kind of perking up earlier in the week, is kind of easing its way into what says could be a quiet weekend, which of course means, you know, all bets are off once the weekend hits. Dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. VVIX down to about a 112, so back off that 120 plus level it was lurking at earlier in the week. That puts it down about 4 points from where it was this time last week. So a lot to unpack. Jim, as our guest, we'll start with you. It's kind of one of those weird weeks. We saw the week kick off and, you know, markets were inching higher and vol was also creeping higher, which is usually an unsettling sign that perhaps something else is lurking. There's another shoe waiting to drop. Now we're coming into the end of the week and the markets have mostly been green since then. And we're seeing vol coming off. What has been lighting up your tape on this kind of weird week?
Well, yeah, the weird week, and it's actually kind of been a weird sort of better part of 30 days since the beginning of July, because SPX continues to manage, even though it's sort of back and forth a little bit. You know, we're back at all-time highs, and yet VIX cash put in a 2021 low on July 2nd. Which also happened to be a day when SPX made it then an all-time high at 43.52. And since then, we've got 80 points higher in SPX, but the VIX has gone from 1507-ish to whatever, 1660 today. And you know, looking at the VIX futures through the exchange-traded products, you know, SVXY has not gotten back to its July 2nd high. VXX has not broken through its July 2nd low. So somebody, and maybe it's Sebastian, has been bidding vol over the last 30 days. It ain't right.
It ain't right. It ain't right. You could probably sum up a lot of what's going on in the vol market out there right now with it ain't right. Well, Mr. Meatball, you have been invoked, indeed besmirched, as a degenerate volatility buyer. What say you, sir, and what's lighting up your tape out there this week?
Yeah, you know, it's interesting. Jim took the words right out of my mouth. We really have seen vol back off, though, since Monday. I've been impressed that we've seen the market basically go up and VIX come off with it. I'm wondering whether we're going to have that breakout lower here. Maybe that vol bid was just traders gearing up for vol to really collapse, because the last 4 days have not been anything like what we saw the previous month. But yeah, we're still 90 points higher from where we were July 2nd. VIX still up about 1.5 points. I'd really like to see VVIX fall off toward 100 and the VIX make a real break, but things are definitely soft today. And we are continuing to see some bearish activity in VIX itself that maybe has me thinking, hey, maybe I was wrong. Maybe we aren't heading for some sort of vol explosion, which I felt pretty strongly about on Monday.
Well, it certainly seemed like the pieces were lining up that way. And again, who knows? Who knows what's going on? The weekends are always interesting times out here. By the way, our chat has learned to claim victory very early. We already got Mr. Unlimited in our chat saying, thanks for letting me borrow your time machine last week. Options Queen. It helped me get this week's crystal ball correct. I forgot to buy lottery tickets. So yeah, he was at a 1667, which was almost exactly a bullseye when we kicked off the show. So looking good there for Mr. Unlimited. Remember, on Vol Views, claim victory early and often. It always helps out at the end of the day. Speaking of helping out there in the land of the futures, now let's move on to this new incentive program that Tom and everybody else has been talking about over there in the MIAX hot seat for a while. Seems like it's starting to pay dividends out there, and numbers just coming out from MJX, which of course now is a wholly owned subsidiary of MIAX. They said futures, so Spike's futures obviously, in July reached 1,596 contracts. That's a new monthly, that's ADV now. It's ADV for the futures. That's pretty impressive. And then Spike's futures overall volume spiked, pun intended, to its highest level yet on July 13 with a little over 4,097 contracts. They're saying that expanded group of participants and the zero fee policy that began just in July clearly paying dividends. So all of you out there who've been saying, yeah, I would like a little bit tighter markets out there on the options, this is going to pave the way toward that. We need to see an uptick in the underlying first, and certainly seems like, this program's only been around since the beginning of July. So we have a month, and so far it looks like, I'm looking at the chart here, and it's an impressive increase over the previous months and earlier this year. So again, if that's any indication, then things are looking up out there. What's not looking up this week, though, are VIX futures. They are trending in the other direction coming into showtime. We have that AUG future down over a point from where it was this time last week, about 1.25 points, and the SEP future south a little bit over 0.75 of a point, about 0.8 of a point to the dark side. So, Jim, I know you said it just ain't right out there right now, but what's not right? What's catching your eye out there in the world of the VIX futures term structure, sir?
Yeah. So again, the term structure looks okay, right? We've got some contango at the front end. It looks like, peace in the world, but you got to look at the spreads. We've got 8 days till AUG expiration, and we got more than 2 points between the future and cash. And I did a little math, and historically, with 8 days to expiration, you've got more like 50 basis points. So we're kind of 4x wide of where the historical averages would be. And, we've also got a pretty wide spread between AUG and September, more than 4 points between, between September and spot. So, the shape of the curve looks okay, but the spread to spot doesn't make a lot of sense.
Interesting. Yet another indicator that perhaps there are some other unknowns lurking out there. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts there on everything that's catching your eye in the world of vol futures this week, sir?
Yeah, like Jim said, we've had a really pretty wide chasm between the August future and where the cash has been trading. And the back end of the curve, after you get by August, it flattens up significantly. You basically have a VIX curve that is August and September in a contango, and then flat, really flat behind it. The October and November and December are all trading on top of each other. So there is, continues to be a bid for, that October, November timeframe in the VIX futures. August is finally falling off, but is still trading at a 2-point premium to the cash. Yeah, we've got a weekend coming up, and that's going to affect things, but not like this. This is ridiculously wide.
It is ridiculous indeed. You know what else was ridiculous were the numbers for July. We broke them all down from OCC yesterday on the option block. I won't repeat them all here, but there are a few salient points that are relevant for vol views here. First off, index options, which has kind of been a bit of a dark spot pretty much for most of the pandemic. While everything else was spiking up, pun intended again, index options was kind of circling the drain. This past month, July, index options volume, 41 million contracts, up nearly 40% from July of last year. So that's a bit of a bright spot. And also the futures, again, OCC pretty much just clears VIX futures. Total futures volume, 4.7 million contracts. That's up 35% from July of last year. So we saw a few months this year where it seems like the futures volume might be ticking up, and then it kind of fell apart again. But this past month, July, seems like it was interesting. By the way, July overall, in case you missed it yesterday, is the most active July in the history of the business. Pretty much every month this year has been the most active, whatever it was, in the history of the options market. So everyone was asking out there, can the party continue? There's certainly right now the answer is a resounding yes. Speaking of parties, they must be having, that's where the MIAX guys are today. They're having a freaking celebration. In terms of numbers over there, they're kind of crushing it out there. July, they hit a new single day market share. If you're not familiar, listeners, all the exchanges battle for market share every day, every minute of every day. They all want to be 100%. No one's going to get there, obviously, but that's the goal. And every tick of market share is a pretty valuable thing. MIAX hit a new single-day record of 16.7, so nearly 17% of all the volume went up on MIAX back on July 2nd, and an overall monthly market share record of about 15.5% out there. So that's pretty impressive for one of the newer entrants to the space. So I'm guessing they're having a nice shindig over there to celebrate for the month of July. Speaking of options, let's go on out to the vol options now. Spikes looking pretty similar to what it was this time last week. We talked right before showtime last week. The big three-way that went up, it was the AUG 2017 put spread with a bit of a AUG 30 call kicker. Seems like maybe someone's got some long vol out there, and they're buying the put spread and then selling the call against it. So a bit of a collar against the spikes. An intriguing trade. That went up about 1,000 times, so 3,000 contracts total. That's still kind of the big dog out there in spikes land right now. We'll see if some of these newer, tighter, more active futures markets in the spikes futures, if that leads to some more paper going up next week. Speaking of paper, not a heck of a lot out there in VIX options today. It's closing in on half, really, I should say, of its ADV. So it's not like it's doing nothing, but it's not blowing the doors off out there either. The ADV is also down quite a bit. It's down to 426,000 contracts. That's down nearly 40,000 contracts from this time last week. So VIX options volume continues to erode out there. 206,000 contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. Let's break down the top positions out there in VIX land right now. Cost you 129,000 contracts to break into the top 10 in VIX land. That's not a ton, but it's not nothing either. Number 9, 133,000. Oh, by the way, number 10 are the October 17 puts. So we're already doing the put dance out to October. Number 9, 133,000 of the SEP 30 calls. By the way, it is 60-40 puts to calls now in the top 10. So it has flipped. It was the other direction last week with more calls. Now more puts, perhaps another sign of what's evolving out there in the VIX landscape. Number 8, also 133,000 of the SEP 16 puts. Number 7, $1.34 of the SEP 18 puts. Number 6, 144,000 of the SEP 35 calls, the second of 4 calls in the top 10 here. Number 5, $1.64 of the AUG 20 puts. Number 4, 186,000 of the August 16 puts. Number 3, we have the 189,000 of the August 17 puts. And then the top two actually calls again. So calls leading the dance again out here, at least in the top positions in VIX. Number 2, 192,000 of the NOV 60s. This is the strike that's been open for a little bit, and a fascinating one. And then number 1, 226,000 of the SEP 25s. You will recall that the July 2540 was the number 1 position in VIX for many months out here. Does stand to reason. Perhaps the same player coming back to swing for the fences again, not doing the other side of the vertical, at least not yet, but putting on the 25s there potentially. If that is the same person that didn't work out so well last time, we'll see if it performs better this time here. Let's go around the horn there before I break down the day's activity. Jim, we'll start with you. Any intriguing VIX options activity coming across your tape this week, sir?
No, I think you pointed out the flip in the waiting from calls to puts. It makes sense, as we've seen. Mark pointed out, as we've seen what seems to be a little bit of settling down this week, that you'd expect to see more puts come in, and so as expected. But as we've described, it still feels funky out there.
And what the fans want to know, Jim, is how many of those SEP 25s are you long at TOROSO Advisors, sir?
We can't comment on that.
So all of them. I'm going to read between the lines and say all of them. That's all Jim's position. If you have questions about it, reach out to him. As we keep on rolling, Mr. Meatball, sir, any intriguing VIX options print come across your tape there, or the tapes of your crazies this week, sir?
Yeah, we've been seeing September puts trade pretty actively. The 16s, the 17s, the 18s, even the 15s. We saw traders coming in and going after that. Today, we're seeing pretty heavy put activity. In August, out of the money futures, the 18s are active, the 17s and the 16s, all really busy today. We could see the 16s and 17s surpass 200,000 in open interest by when we come in on Monday, and the 18s aren't far behind it either. So definitely seeing a big increase in put activity, and the call trading has been like the way out of the money stuff. We still see a lot of activity at the 60 strike and beyond, not at our normal 25s and 30s.
Yeah, there is, like we said at the top of the show, it just ain't right. There are some weird prints afoot. Let's see if we can find some of them. Again, not a ton of paper blowing our doors off this week. Today, like we said, only 204,000 contracts on the tape as of a few minutes ago. The top trade out there today, the SEP 17 puts, 17,000 of those on the tape, followed by 16,000 of the AUG 18 puts, and about 15,000 of the AUG 16 puts, as the Meatball alluded to. For number 4 here, we've got the AUG 17 puts. You got a nice little put strip going there, about 15,000 of those as well. And rounding out the top 5 here, we've got the AUG 29 calls, flipping the script, 13,000 of those going up today. Yesterday, similar paper, 264,000 contracts on the tape. The most active contract, once again, the AUG 17 puts, about 31,000 of those, followed by the SEP 18 puts, 17,000 of those. Then we're flipping the script again. SEP pars, 13,400, and the SEP 60s, 11,600. Maybe some SEP crazy vertical action. I got to see what they got for those pars if they did sell them. If that's one of those ones, if you're selling those for a couple of cents, then what the hell are you doing? But we'll have to dig into those a little bit deeper. And the AUG 30s, they seem comparatively normal, the AUG 30s. And that's a pretty optimistic strike as well. 11,000 of those trading yesterday as well. Wednesday, again, similar paper, 231,000 contracts. This is why the ADV is trending lower, listeners. Nearly 20,000 of the AUG 18 puts was the number 1 print, followed by 15,300 of the AUG 16 puts. Number 3, 13, almost 14,000 of the AUG 20 puts. Number 4, 12,000 of the NOV 22 calls. That's an intriguing one. And rounding out the top 5 on Wednesday, about 12,000 of the SEP 18 puts. Tuesday was pretty much the most active day of the week, though not by much. 338,000 contracts on the tape on Tuesday. Number 1 most active contract, the AUG 17 puts with about 24,000, followed by the SEP 18 puts, 21,000 of those. Number 3, AUG 20 puts, about 20K of those. Number 4, AUG 16 puts with about 18,000. And rounding out the top 5 on Tuesday, 17,000 of the SEP 17 puts. Monday, almost the exact same amount of paper, 335,000 contracts. The most active contract was the SEP 15 puts with nearly 50,000, 48,000 going up of those bad boys, followed by 26,000 of the AUG 16 puts, 19,000 of the AUG 30s. Back to that 30 strike. Interesting. Number 4, 14,000 almost exactly of the SEP 17 puts. And rounding out our top 5 on Monday, we have almost 14,000 of the AUG 20 puts. Let's get on out to the product you folks love to see erode. That's VXX. It was giving you some of that this week. Kicking off the show, it was at about a 28.80. That puts it down almost 1.5 points, about 1.4 points from where it was this time last week. Actually doing some paper out there today. Let's see if we've got those numbers updated, even though the ADV, weirdly enough, exactly the same as it was this time last week. 223,000 contracts open out there. Or should be, 223,000 contracts ADV out there in VXX. As of course, as I pull it up now, it does not want to play ball with me. Let's go out to the top 10s here while I get my system, my quotes rejiggered here. Top 10 positions out here in VXX right now. Nice to see a lot of the pre-split adjusted stuff has gone the way of the dodo, have been usurped. Not all of it. There's still a few here, but a lot of them have. Number 10 cost you 18,600 contracts to break into the top 10 in VXX. That gets you to the SEP 14 puts. Those are pre-split adjusted, obviously. Then we have a nice strip here of regular good old American VXX here. 18, almost 19,000 of the SEP 40 calls. Number 8, almost 21,000 of the AUG 48s. Number 7, back to VXX1, 21,000 of the SEP 14 calls. Number 6, 23K of the AUG 38s. Number 5, 23,000 of the SEP 9 puts. Number 4, 24, almost 25,000 of the AUG 28 puts. Number 3, about 25K of the AUG 27 puts. Starting to see a pattern here. Number 2, 28,000 of the AUG 25 puts. And number 1 still in VXX right now are the VXX1 SEP 10 calls with about 32,500 of those bad boys out there. Mr. Meatball, I know you're crazy, like a little bit of VXX. Anything light up your tape this week, sir?
Yeah, the downside vol has just gotten completely smoked. Near data vol on both of these ETPs, both VXX and UVXY, which we'll get to in a second, super cheap. We're seeing a ton of activity in options that expire today. They've already traded about 5,000 of the AUG 29s expiring today, and several thousand of the 28.5s, and even the 28s that are currently at a penny have 2,300 on the tape. I don't think we're getting a 28 today, folks. That's probably a waste of $1. And other than that, there was a put seller in August that came out and sold a chunk of out of the money puts. I will get those for you here in 1 second, because that popped onto my screen today. I was a little surprised. It was. We saw a seller of 10,000 of the AUG 1348 calls at 3 cents. The SEP 20 puts were sold 5,900 times at 3 cents. The 21 puts sold 5,900 at 7 cents. Somebody also selling the SEP 27s at 220. So we have some interesting paper on super cheap options in VXX today.
Mr. Jim, anything lighting up your tape out there in the land of the traditionally ever eroding VXX?
It just refuses to erode to the place that it should be. But
I know you want a zero. It's not getting there today, sir. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you.
No, because then we'll just have to reverse split it again.
Then we do the whole dance again. It's a beautiful thing.
Well, I some of the same things that caught Mark's eye. There does seem to be some out of the money put activity coming back in. Some people thinking that maybe we're out of the woods and we can continue to erode. I don't know yet. It's not me.
Is this the trade you liked in the past? Are you into the whole eroding ETPs at TOROSO, sir?
Oh, the erosion of these ETPs is a beautiful thing, and there are many ways to play it, and so we're big fans of things that erode organically.
Or you can just do it the way Jim does it and buy over 200,000 the SEP 25 calls in VIX, whatever floats your boat out there in the volatility landscape. Let's keep on rolling out here as my system finally wants to play ball with me again. UVXY, the other product you folks like to watch your road, kicking into high gear this week, off 2.5 points, down to about a 26, almost exactly right now. The ADV, 135,000. That's up slightly from last week, up about 5,000. Seeing almost 100,000 contracts on the tape today, about 92,000. Let's break down let's do a top 5 out here in UVXY. It gets kind of small beyond 5. Number 5 is already only 8,000. That gets you to the AUGs expiring today, the 6s, 70 calls. Now, these are the ones we were talking about recently. Yeah, these AUG 70s. Yeah, these have been open for a bit. Yeah, I don't think we're going there today, whoever has these, but interesting strike selection. Nonetheless, I hope you sold these and hope you got a lot of money for them. Number 4, 8,500 of the AUG 27 puts. Number 3, back to UVX1, 9,500 of the Jan 1 puts. Number 2, 13,000 of the AUG. Again, the 70s. This was last week as well. Dominating the tape here. 13,000 of the AUG 70s. Expiring next week, and then 13,700 of the AUG 70s expiring on the 20th. It's like someone's out there watching all the crazy meme stocks like AMC, and they're seeing people out there buying, the 145 calls, the topmost strikes you can get, or, maybe what was it, the 90s or whatever it was recently in Hood out there. They're seeing that trade in the meme stocks and saying, I want to replicate that in UVXY. I'm going to gobble up all the 70 calls I can. Hunt Brothers corner the market on 70 calls in UVXY. So, Mr. Meatball, I ask you, why are you doing that?
Well, I love those upside calls in UVX because they can't lose. No, I mean, UVXY is another one that, as Jim mentioned at the top of the show, these have not been hitting new lows. I think this may have finally gotten a new low today. But they've been super stubborn. The low touch was, if we closed here, this would be a new low for UVXY. But this was our first new low since July 2nd. So these ETPs have not been dying by the vine the way we would normally expect. And that's because volatility has remained really bid. We're probably getting to a point where, it maybe makes sense to dabble in some of this stuff. I definitely am have some longer dated things that I think are going to work out really well. But maybe with where we are now, we can get some short-term plays off that'll actually pay off.
Yeah, it's kind of been a bit of a wasted month from a downside perspective in UVXY and VXX. We flirted with it a little bit, but not quite the aggressive trajectory we saw in the immediate post-reverse split levels that we saw for both of these products. It seemed like they couldn't get back to zero fast enough. But let's see what's going on out here from an overall earnings vol perspective. I know a lot of you are paying attention to that out there because that is a big driver of broad system volatility right now. Let's see. This week we had some big names popping off. We had Alibaba on Tuesday, BP, Under Armour, Eli Lilly, Activision, Blizzard, and Lyft. Wednesday, GM, CVS Health, Roku, Uber, Marathon, and EA. Thursday, Moderna, Viacom, Square, Beyond Meat, and Shake Shack. I had some Beyond sausage this morning. It was delicious. And Friday, DraftKings. That was apropos of nothing. Unpaid endorsement. Vol Views brought to you by Beyond Meat. Yeah, so a lot of vol. Let's break it down here. We got the earnings move reports, earnings move results, and earnings season reports. You guys know where to get those. TheOptionsInsider.com is the place to go. Click on the Options News and Articles tab on the homepage. That will begin your journey to the dark side there. We talked a lot about some of these earlier this week. There has been a lot of pretty much squeezing vol to death out there, I think, is the moral. So what did Jim say? It just ain't right. Well, it ain't right out here in the vol space for earnings either. They're just crushing it. Etsy, they were at 202, pretty much even. They were pricing in, 8.5%. They delivered 7.6%. That's one of the closer ones we've seen lately. Roku is at 420. They were pricing in 7.4%. They delivered 5.5%. So once again, squeezing that one a wee bit. EA, they were earlier this week on the 4th. They were pricing in 4.8%. They delivered 1.5%. So a lot more vol getting squeezed out of that one. Uber, same deal. People were talking about this one might be a mover. They were pricing in 6.3%. They delivered 1.7%. Moderna on the 5th before the bell yesterday, they were pricing in, get this, listeners, 7.9%. They delivered 0.4%. It almost literally can't do less than that. You're not going to have it just sit unched. But that's pretty darn close to it. All of that, of course, translating into a season that is once again looking pretty blood red. We have week 1 averaging out at 79%, week 2 an apocalyptic 56%, then 65% for week 3. And actually, as of midweek, week 4 was looking all right at 110%. That's the first outperformance week we've seen in, I don't know, ever since the pandemic began. Of course, those numbers will be updated with later ones from yesterday and today. And that number will probably come in aggressively because look what I just read to you. Not a lot of outperformance there. But still, for a brief moment, it looked good. All of that averaging out to about a 77%. That means if you bought a basket of earnings vol for this season, you got back about 77 cents on the dollar. Was Mr. Meatball, I know you watch a lot of single names these days out there, sir. What's catching your eye out there in an earnings front? And then how's the slinging of the collars and hood going, sir?
Yeah, so let's talk about what's actually been happening. There's a weird inverse correlation between AMC, GameStop, and Robinhood. When Robinhood goes up, those two stocks go down, and vice versa. So we've got AMC and GameStop down, Robinhood having itself quite a day. Yesterday, Robinhood gets smoked. Those names are up real strong. Earnings season has been the reversal season. Stocks that get smoked then pop, and stocks that pop get smoked. DraftKings had great earnings, was up over up $5 pre-earnings this morning. It's given most of that away. Uber was down significantly on its earnings. It then had a really nice pop. It's been just a fade the move. I think maybe the ugliest earnings on the week, the winner for ugliest earnings, was actually Clorox, which got absolutely bludgeoned on its earnings call this week. That was a very rough one, was down over 10% on that news. That's really been the bulk of what I've noticed in earnings. We still have a bunch coming next week to make things interesting for you folks. Don't worry.
Yeah, the season is not over, not by a long shot. A lot of numbers to crunch still, a lot of names to parse and analyze, and for you folks out there to trade around, which is always fun. Speaking of fun, we ran these numbers recently. We haven't had a chance to really squeeze them onto the show yet because a lot's been popping off, so I want to do so quickly now. We always do our checkups on the state of vol interest out there using a lot of the broad search tools to see how things are lining up. We ran these recently, kind of our mid-year checkup. We do it usually at the beginning of the year, mid-year, and end of year. And let's see how things are ranking right now. Let's start with very broad vol-related terms like volatility itself. As you might imagine, for this year, again, that's how the trends usually rank it over the course of the past year. The high for the year, the apex of interest in that volatility search term was January 24th through 30th, so right after the inauguration of this year. Currently, when we ran it recently within the last week or change, it was about a 22. So 100 would be the apex, so right about a quarter of that interest. So vol interest right now, not historically strong, but again, it is kind of middle of summer here, not exactly the usual time when folks are hot and heavy on vol. So that isn't perhaps super, super shocking. Let's drill down a little bit farther. Let's go to the interest in volatility trading. A little bit more in our wheelhouse here. That peaked again, same week, January 24th through 30th. So a few days after expiration. If you're wondering, that same week, VIX cash was at about a 37.25. So a wee bit higher than it is right now out there. The current level, similar to vol itself, at about a 23. So roughly a quarter of what it was at those crazy levels. And VIX, has been cut more than in half pretty much from those levels as well. So probably something to do with those corresponding vol levels, why the interest has fallen off a wee bit. Let's drill a little bit farther down. Let's go to volatility options. That hit its high a few weeks later. That hit its high on February 7th to 13th that week. That was the week that VIX closed at 1997 that week. So that was the first week. And everyone, remember, that seems like so long ago now, but that everyone really went crazy. VIX closed below 20 for the first time since the pandemic began. That was a big watershed moment, a big milestone. Of course, we've been bouncing all over that 20 strike ever since then, mostly below, but a few times above. That week, the vol interest right now compared to that week, volatility options interest, I should say, is at about a 36, so roughly a third. So right now, it's mostly lower across the board. Let's drill even farther down. Let's go to VIX. Not much else you can search for VIX other than VIX itself, right? That hit its high last year, actually, the week of August 30th to September 5th. That was on VIX hit a high of 33.60 during that week on September 3rd. So a wee bit higher. When we ran this test a couple of weeks ago, this was about a week and a half ago, this was at about a 28. So again, the interest roughly a quarter of what it was back at the high. And we picked some weird ones too, just for fun, like tail risk. And that hit its high last year, this year, June 6th through 12th of this year for some strange reason. And then nothing, the interest is negligible right now. Not enough really search terms to do it right now. So not a lot of interest in tail risk. Let's go a little bit broader. Let's go to options trading itself. That hit its high that same week, Jan 24th to 30th, when VIX was around a 37. We were immediately after the inauguration. A lot of madness going on down there in DC. And options trading is at about 29 currently. Of course, options volume, which is the number that really counts, is still looking very strong as the numbers we posted for July out there. So fascinating stuff. I don't know, Mr. Meatball, any surprises for you in those numbers? Vol interest right now, roughly a third to a quarter of what it was at the highs for the year. So not exactly maybe surprising for the depths of August.
Yeah, volumes have really fallen off in VIX options. We're not seeing a lot of the activity, any of the real volume. The only piece that's really picked up has been put trading. I'm not completely surprised, but I wonder whether we're going to see the other side of 15 here next week, or if we are going to get that pop. We are at a precipice today, and with the S&P not doing much and vol getting smoked, I don't know. I think we could hit new lows next week if all goes well.
Let's see if your questions go well. It is time for the volatility voicemail.
It's time to share your thoughts and opinions with your fellow volatility traders. It's time to check the volatility voicemail. Make your voice heard by dialing 779-669-4VOL. Posting a comment on the optionsinsider.com, sending an email to questions@theoptionsinsider.com, or posting your questions to twitter.com/options or facebook.com/theoptionsinsider.
All right, everybody, let's get to it. First off, let's give an update on our first question of the week in a while. We've been lax on the polls, that many of you have reminded us about. So they're back. This week's question of the week: how could it be anything other than hood? A lot of vol to be found out there in that name this week. When we posted this poll yesterday, we said hood options, they're live and trading up a storm with the stock hovering around 60, which I'll have to see where it is right now. The AUG at the money straddle was trading for about $18. That's pretty much a 200 implied volatility. So simple question this week: are you a buyer or a seller of the straddle at those levels? Again, gave you three choices: buy it, sell it, or what the heck, are you crazy? Mr. Jim, if you have any thoughts on the madness of the hood straddle, if you would be a buyer or a seller. And then more importantly, what do you think our audience is up to, sir?
Wow. I would say the audience are probably buyers, and I would not touch this thing with Mark's brisket.
Well, it is a little hard, the brisket, so it probably could survive. So I'm going to put you down for the what are you crazy camp for you personally, which is, I'm with you. That's the camp I'm in. And you think the audience are buyers. Interesting. Mr. Meatball, what are you feeling? Remember this time yesterday, it was exactly a tie, 38.5% for buy it and sell it. It has evolved this week, or I should say today. What are you feeling now, Mr. Meatball?
I mean, we continue to see upside skew in this thing be absolutely bananas. I was commenting yesterday that they'll let you buy call spreads that are in the money underwater, which is really nice. And by that, I mean, I can buy like a call that is $10 in the money, sell a call that is, $15 or $20 out of the money. And the debit on that is less than the spread between my call and my in the money call and the actual stock price by several dollars. And that's because upside is just so big. The audience is a buyer of the straddle, and I agree with them. I don't think this is one that anybody should sell. This sucker likes to move.
Does like to move. They actually have flipped the script, though. 46.5% now saying they want to sell that thing. So some of our audience getting a little dangerous. What's the old Darkwing Duck? Let's get dangerous. Well, sounds like you folks are getting dangerous out there with that hood straddle. By the way, hood today looks like 56 and about a half. So a little bit shy of that 60 level out there. 32.5% or so of you saying you want to buy that straddle, and about 21% with me and Jim saying, what? Are you crazy? You got about a day left out there if you haven't gone to play. It's a fun one, a silly one to bring you back. Let's go out to some more serious questions now. It's this question from Latchkey, an interesting one. All right. What is the sweet spot, quote unquote, when trading volatility options? It seems like 1 week is too short to get the move you want, but when you roll out beyond 4 to 6 weeks, it seems like you don't get much bang for your extra buck. Jim, this is a question we get a lot about trade structure in the volatility marketplace. And I get what Latchkey is putting down. Sometimes you look at the options chain, you're thinking maybe I want to buy some upside or some verticals or some flies or whatever it is. And you can say, I can go out, a week or two and I can get it for this. But, I go out a few more weeks or another month. It's not going to cost me a heck of a lot more. Maybe I should just do that. And I look how much time I get for not much extra money. And that always isn't the best play. Mr. Jim, when you're coming in to set these things up, aside from your mass amount of SEP 25s, we'll put those in a different bucket. How do you like to view these? What, as he puts it, what is the sweet spot for you, sir?
Well, theta kills. And so, weekly options, can kill you pretty quickly. And so, having some time to work with usually makes sense. Exactly how much time, I think it really just depends on, what your underlying is. But I would advise people to give yourself a little time. Don't try to be too cute, because, you got to get the direction right. And but theta can still kill you even if you got the direction right.
So you like beyond the 4 to 6 weeks time frame? You like longer term?
I wouldn't mind beyond the 4 to 6.
There you go, Mr. Jim. That's why he likes all those SEP 25s. He can't get enough of them. Mr. Meatball, again, this is the question we've had a lot. People looking for, a pop in whatever it is, VIX spikes, whatever. And they have trouble sometimes when they put on the trade because they don't structure it right, and they maybe go a wee bit beyond the event than the pop that happens. And so they have, let's say, VIX or spikes are popping this week, and they have a 3-month out product. It's not really going to reflect a lot of that for them. Then they write to us and say, what's up? I put the right trade on. Why isn't it working for me? So when you're out there and you're talking to your mentees out there, Mr. Meatball, what would you say is that sweet spot?
Yeah, I think that probably the closest thing to a sweet spot, quote unquote, is going to be the second month out, because it'll still move, but it's not going to decay the same way that front month will. But as I always say, and I know Jim agrees with me, the way to trade vol is not to buy a static hedge and wait for it to move. You buy vol high and sell higher. Wait for volatility to start to rise, then trade in that near month future or those near month options. You're going to find you have a lot more success buying a 17 on its way up to 20 or 25 than you do buying the 20 calls when VIX is at 15 and not going anywhere. So wait for vol to move, then put on the trade. Don't these static hedges are just throwing good money after bad.
Speaking of hedging, that leads right into our next question here. I like this from Elvis, LVIS, the king writing in, saying, what role should volatility products play in a traditional long equity portfolio? Should it be considered a hedge and allocated accordingly, or is there something else to consider? Thank you. I bristle at that use case for VIX as a hedge. I won't beat that drum again today. Mr. Jim, we'll start with you. You're a long equity guy. Could be a fund manager. Could be your old mom and pop who has some long equity positions. What role do you think vol products should play in that portfolio, sir?
Well, I think obviously there are a lot of people who take their long equity positions and use vol, if you will, to hedge. We're still seeing a lot of people out looking for something that gives them a tail hedge that they don't have to pay for. And as soon as I invent that thing, I'll invite you onto the yacht, because it just doesn't exist. I think unfortunately people have unrealistic expectations about what they can do in their portfolios to either capitalize on volatility or to protect themselves against volatility.
So you're saying the VIX up and VIX down product, that wasn't the vol panacea you were waiting for, Jim?
Yeah, that one didn't work out too well, did it?
I can recommend, though, if you want some good nighttime reading, read the prospectus on that thing. That'll put you to sleep, talking about the distributions and all the voodoo they had to do to try to make that thing work. Mr. Meatball, same question for you, sir. What role should volatility products play in a traditional long equity portfolio?
Yeah, I think they have a use. Again, like I just said, when vol starts to move, that's when I start to make my hedging decisions and not before. So I'm not in a huge rush to figure out, what am I doing as a static hedge. Now, when I do use a static hedge or put some sort of hedge on, I generally use a call spread because of, again, upside curvature in VIX. You get a lot of bang for your buck selling out of the money calls and relative to the at the monies, and you can see some pretty nice successes there.
And we'll see if we see some pretty nice successes as we head right on into the crystal ball.
It's time to peer into the future and reveal what the volatility gods hold in store. It's time to look into the crystal ball.
All right, here we go. This is the moment Jim has been dreading all show long. It is the time to wrestle with those mercurial vol gods, see what they have up their sleeves for this time next week. I was feeling a little bit more vol than we ended up getting. By the way, coming into the end of the show, we have spikes right around a 16 3/4. VIX cash bumping around a 16.5 right now. So, ooh. So Mr. Tom from MIAX was pretty much at 1652 or so. 16 double is where Tom was. Wow. So he gets a bullseye, a rare bullseye for the hot seat over there in MIAX land. He was fading it. I was not fading it as aggressively. I was at an 1833. So no winner chicken dinner for me. And the meatball was well beyond me at a 19 double. So he was almost a 20 handle. So no love there. We had Mr. Unlimited claiming victory earlier in the show. He was looking really good. I forgot about Tom, but you were the definite winner. You're still pretty darn close. You should tip your cap to yourself, Mr. Unlimited. Not exactly within our 10th of a point margin of victory to really have that bullseye, but pretty darn close. Now you know how hard this game is. We make it within a 10th of a point. I don't know why we do that to ourselves, but we do. We're just gluttons for punishment here, but pretty darn close nonetheless. 1667. I doff my cap to you. But Options Queen, our kind of reigning defending champion out there for 3 weeks in a row, she finally fell by the wayside at 18 1/4. I think looks like Mr. Elmotis is going to top off the time machine with plutonium and give it back to her. So she can have it for next week. JJ was at an 1876. No love for him. Allen was feeling a lot lower, 1565. No joy for him. And EES, I don't recognize that one, but at a 1604. We got a few others here, but they were kind of far outside the realm. So it seems like it was Tom with Mr. Unlimited right behind it. Interesting stuff. You know what that means? Mr. Jim, the MIAX hot seat won this week, so you get to go first. What are you feeling for this time next week, sir?
You know, I haven't been feeling this way for a little while, but I actually think that we may take this week and drift a little bit lower. So I don't think we're going to still take out the July 2nd low, but I could see us, 1540.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Given how we're trending towards the latter portion of the week, it is hard to argue with that. I was the next closest, even though I wasn't that close. I guess I shall go next. Yeah, I was feeling a little bit more vol. It seemed like that was the right tip at the beginning of the week. Then that kind of vol love faded as the week went on. Are we going to get another little burst of vol at the beginning or middle of the week, and will that remain throughout the rest of the week? Or is Mr. Jim correct? Will we kind of continue what we're doing right now, this kind of slow erosion? I could see an argument for both. So you know what? Since Jim went one way, I shall go the other. And I shall say not a ton of vol. I'm going to say maybe we're not that far from where we are right now. Actually, no, I'm going to say a little more. I'm going to say 17 and a quarter, 17.25. So, Mr. Meatball, you can almost drive a truck through that. Nearly 2 points. Where are you going for this time next week?
Well, it keeps working, so I got to do it. I'm going to go 1855.
Maybe it works somewhere else. It does not work on the show, but 1855.
Well, no, it's working for me and my portfolio.
I hear you. So you say.
He's fading his own prediction.
Exactly.
I'm fading my own book.
Exactly. He's fading your SEP 25s. I hate to tell you, Jim. So you can take umbrage with him after the show. So there's your vol market for this week, listeners. Jim on the dark side, 1540. Me looking a little bit higher at 17 and a quarter. And Mr. Meatball just fading everybody, going to an 18 double. What do you guys have on the brain? Hit us up. Let us know. We'll get you all worked in there. If you have a nice pop of victories there, like Options Queen, maybe you'll get some cool, sweet swag coming your way as well. All right. Listeners, that music means we come to the end of our vol journey for this week. But you know what? Doesn't mean you have to go home right now. You can hang out if you're listening live. All of our pro members. We'll have some fun stuff in there. We'll be back in exactly an hour with Options Oddities to break down the weird, wild, wondrous, indeed woolly world of unusual options activity. And spoiler alert, there was some this week, so stay tuned for that. If you're on the pro side, if you haven't joined the secret club yet, you know where to go. TheOptionSider.com/pro is the place to go. And you too can check out all this fun, exclusive content. But before we go, Mr. Jim, if folks want to hit you up, they want to ask you why you have almost 250,000 SEP 25s in your portfolio or anything else, where should they go? What should they do?
I am readily available at Vixologist on Twitter. That's the best place to find out what I'm thinking, and the DMs are open.
Ooh, DMs are open, so you can ask him why is he the new 50 Cent out there? Pick his brain out there at Vixologist on Twitter. And Mr. Meatball, I know you've been busy looking at collars for credits of late and hood and everything else. If folks want to hit you up about all that stuff, where should they go? What should they do?
Yeah, go to optionpit.com, click on my VixEdge. I write a commentary every day. You can subscribe there. Follow me on Twitter at OptionPit, and I put out my commentary there later in the day. You have to wait a little while to get it, but you will get it when I put it out. So putting it out right now.
There you go, optionpit.com. Speaking of commentary, Options Queen says she bombed it last week, but she's going in at 1595. Oh, she's feeling the fade as well. Is that the proper way to go? We shall find out this time next week, listeners. And if you're again on the pro side, you'll find out pretty soon what's going on in the world of oddities. Otherwise, we'll see you back here next week. Another episode of Volatility Views.
Volatility Views is brought to you by MIAX, one of the fastest, most efficient trading platforms in the world. MIAX is proud to bring you Spikes Volatility products. Spikes options and futures are traded on the Spikes Volatility Index, SPIKE, offering pinpoint accuracy, radically faster dissemination, and a highly transparent settlement auction, all for ultra-low exchange fees. It's volatility reimagined. Learn more about Spikes at miaxoptions.com/spikes. Options and futures involve risk and are not suitable for all investors. The statements made are provided for informational purposes only and should not be relied on for financial or legal advice. Volatility Views is also brought to you by Matrix Executions, LLC, an agency broker-dealer focused on best execution and trading workflow automation. A technology-driven firm, Matrix is led by trading pioneers with decades of experience designing and building best-in-class solutions for options markets. Matrix connects to all domestic exchange venues and multiple international exchanges and serves both institutional and individual clients. For more information on Matrix Executions, LLC, please visit matrixexecutions.com. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.